So we're going to look into noting and labelling today. Firstly, we need to go back to the beginning. Now, some of you might be fairly new to meditation, some of you have been meditating for a while. But everybody reflect back to when they first started meditating. When we first start, our experience is very muddled. And what I mean by muddled is we can't see that our thinking is separate from our emotions, that the sound is separate from the irritation we have to the sound, that pleasantness and unpleasantness have nothing to do with the experience, that they're separate again, that seeing is separate from the knowing of the seeing, that being mindful is separate, right, from awareness. All these different factors, everything is just kind of mixed in. It's like just getting everything in one milkshake, putting it on the blender and blending it all together. We can't see one thing from another. And this is generally how most people live their lives. Generally, that's how they live their lives. And this is what we do. An example of that would be if somebody was walking past the hallway outside and there's a lot of noise. If I was at this level of experience being muddled, I would hear the sound, and then the conversation in my head would go, can't they keep that child quiet? You know, the child's so noisy, you know, it's just so noisy. I can't meditate because of all that noise. Can't they have consideration? Can't they see there's a sign outside that door, says there's meditation? If they had respect for other people, blah, blah, blah. So there's a lot of things going on there. This is an example of muddled. If we're going to observe it through meditation, what we would see a sound, right? We would see a mental interpretation of that sound as being somebody outside. We can't know there's someone outside, we just hear a sound. Then we would see the unpleasantness to that, and we would see our disliking of that. Then we would see our aversion to that. Then we would see the desire driving that aversion for it to stop. Then we would see the thinking. Then we would see the full-blown emotions and anger. But what we would see, that every single one of them was a separate event, that they weren't mixed up together. We'd also see that it had that sound, and our reaction to that has nothing to do with whether we can actually meditate or not. Absolutely nothing to do with it. But how most people live their lives, this is it. Their relationship is like that. I don't like this, I like that. And it's all mixed up. Can't see it separate. To live in a world where there's no thinking is just incomprehensible. Living in a world where you don't follow your feelings, where you don't chase after pleasantness and run away from unpleasantness, is just like, how can that be? Yeah? People just can't see that. So what meditation practice, in particular mindfulness practice, does is allows us to see what's really going on, what's driving us, why we're falling asleep, why we're sleepy. We get to understand this. All this sort of stuff. Yeah? If we don't know, we just think, I am sleepy, I am angry, and this is why. But when we really see it, then it gets interesting. So noting and labelling, which are powered by mindfulness, their purpose is to actually break up this muddled experience and create clarity, allow us to see the actual process behind it and start to see it separately. Now let's look, if you've been meditating for a while, you can tell how your practice is progressing. You might even feel like it's progressing at all. You might think progression is getting into deeper and deeper still states, but it's not. Progression is breaking up of experience. So you think about it now. When you sit down to meditate, right, do you experience the sound as separate from the thinking about the sound? Do you experience the breathing that you're watching in meditation separate from the watching of the breath? Do you experience, right, the emotion separate from the thought? The unpleasantness separate from the reaction to it? And so on. So start to look. Do you experience your thoughts as happening without your, what is it? Without your consent? That the thinking is just happening by itself and you have no control over it. Do you find that? Do you see your mind as wandering around separate from you? That is, it wanders where it wants and you watch it wander. You start to see this, don't you? You start to see, I'm trying to meditate and the sunny intention's over here. No, I want it here, but it's going over there. So you start to see this. The more you watch that, the clearer it becomes. So this is experience breaking up. As it breaks up, your relationship to it starts to change. You're no longer the victim. You're no longer, this is happening to me. You see all this stuff happening. You can watch it. So that's what we're doing in this practice. So look in your own practice and start to notice how it's breaking up, and you can see how deeply it's breaking up. Now, an example of this, I was thinking of an example and I came up with cleaning the house. Say we've got a house that's nice and ordered, and then we have some visitors come over. They're really nice people and they like to do the washing up and put everything away. But when they put everything away, they don't know where anything goes. So everything just ends up all over the place. You go, and then you start looking around. I know this is here somewhere, digging through the cupboards and drawers and that, you can't find things. That's like that first stage of meditation. That's where everything is muddled together. We can't see where anything is. It's like having the house and everything is just all over the place. You can't find anything. That's delusion. You can't find anything anywhere. The next stage as the meditation practice starts to deepen would be like if we started to sort things into groups. We put all the cutlery together. Yeah? We put all the plates and saucers and all that sort of thing together. Then the cups and glasses and everything go into another cupboard. That's the next stage. That's like us doing our meditation and suddenly we notice, oh, it's not so muddled, just a second. There's the mind, right? There's thinking, there's a sound, there's sensations. Can you see? There's happiness, there's sadness. You start to see it starts to break up into these groups. Yeah? And then as it starts to develop, your practice will develop deeper. It's like going to these sections. Okay, we go to the cutlery. Now we put the spoons here, we put the forks here, we put the knives here, we put the steak knives here, we put the spades here. Yeah? Then we put all the dinner plates here, and we put the bowls here, and we put the saucers here. And we go to the other cupboard, the glasses go here, the coffee cups, the tea cups, the alcohol cups, whatever it is. What are they called? See how they're separated? So we're separated it. This is like in your meditation practice, instead of just seeing muddleness, then you see, oh, thinking. Now you see, oh, thinking driven by longing. Thinking driven by planning. Thinking driven by anger. Thinking driven by sadness. So you'll see every thought has this charge behind it. So you start to observe that. See how it's getting more precise? So it's not just thinking in general. It's like you're thinking, you notice, oh, sad. Oh, planning. Oh, wanting. Oh, dreaming. Oh, fantasizing. Oh, remembering. All of these are different charges that are driving the thought. Every thought has this charge. And this goes for all experience. Yeah? You'll see sound. Oh, this is a pleasant sound. I like that. Oh, this is an unpleasant sound. Yeah? You start to notice it. It starts to break up. Then the next stage is really interesting. Then if you look at it, you sort everything out not by what it is, by what it's made of. Don't we? So you go to the cutlery drawer, right? And you sort that out. Oh, this is the fine silverware. This is just normal steel. And then this is plastic. So you sort out all the knives and forks and everything into their sections like that too and keep them. You want to keep the silver separate, don't you? You want to have that for the whole of your life and never use it. Yeah. Yeah? It's too good to use. Yeah? And then we go to the plates and bowls. We can sort. There's fine china for fine dining, and then there's ordinary plates for every day, and then there's the plastic plates. And then we go to the glass and cup cupboard, right? Then you've got crystal. You want the crystalware separate from the glass, separate from the plastic, and we do that. So now we're not doing it by what it is, we're doing it by what it's made of. So as the meditation practice develops, we start to sort everything out or observe it in what it's made of. So we see it in terms of the 4 elements, right? When we see a thought, right, which has longing in it, it's driven by heat. There's a feeling of heat, the heat of passion. There's a heat. If we're longing for something, our attention is always going towards it. So there's a stickiness there. That stickiness is the water element because our attention's sticking to it. It sticks to it. Even when we're angry and we're thinking about something, the water element can be experienced because no matter what we do, we can't stop thinking about them. So we're stuck. We're absolutely stuck to them. Yeah, can you see? Right? An interesting point just here is what mindfulness does is it actually dries up that stickiness. It doesn't stick. Yeah. Yeah, one teacher who was a good friend of ours, he always called it Teflon mind. Nothing sticks. You throw it in there, it can be in there, it can do what it wants, but it doesn't stick to the pan. So it's developing a mind, Teflon mind, that's what mindfulness does. So nothing sticks. You don't get that stickiness. See, so you can observe it. Now, our mind moving out towards the object, that's wind element, that's movement. Yeah? If your thoughts are angry, there's a contraction in there, that's wind element. In the opposite direction, you can experience mental tension. Yeah? See, you can see it. If you've got doubt, the mind shakes. There's wind element again. You can find all these elements. So fire element is arranged from hot to cold. Wind element, movement to tension, contraction. Earth element, hardness to softness. See how you can experience hardness to softness mentally? If you experience love and caring, your mind feels light and soft. Yeah? If you're really closed and you don't want to be loving and caring, you're shutting everyone out, your mind becomes hard and contracted. So there's wind element and earth element. You see? All 4 elements, right? Oh yeah, and I missed out on one, didn't I? Which one was it? Oh, no, earth, fire. No, I got them all. All those 4 elements always exist at the same time. When one exists, they all exist. It's usually just one of them is more dominant. So in your body at the moment, you might feel, like I feel fire element. My body's quite warm at the moment. Yeah? But there's also hardness, there's also tension and movement, right? There's also dryness and wetness. But something's always dominant. Can you see how it breaks it down? So what it's made of. So that's like that. So this series of noting, or let's talk about noting and labelling. Labelling was brought about, was made popular by Mahasi Sayadaw, a senior meditation monk in Myanmar, Burma. And he brought it about specifically for lay people, so people can go and do mindfulness meditation practice, but in their everyday lives. They can take it into the formal practice and then take it out into their lives. And that's why you use this system. So this system allows you to develop your practice very quickly. Now, noting and labelling, the translation from Burmese quite often used Old English, because the English were actually a colony in Burma. Well, that's why it became Burma. Myanmar became Burma, right? Because the English were there. So a lot of the language you'll find is old language. So the word to note is not quite the right translation. Let's look at this. Note would be better to say notice or noticing. So it means noting is noticing, this is what I'm experiencing right now. but also note as in to write down, as in to remember. So you can have note and noticing together. Now if we have noting down and noticing together, what is that?
Mindfulness.
Mindfulness. Sati. Yeah, mindfulness. So to note is to be mindful of. Right? And so in the Burmese it's to be aware of this. But in English it's turned into note. So it's really a combination of note and noticing. So it's mindfulness. Okay. So noting, or to note, is to know this is what I'm experiencing now, and to remember this is what I'm experiencing now. Yeah? Labelling, right, is actually an intentional thought. So a label is something is a concept we put onto something to identify it. So if we're doing it in meditation, I'm sitting here watching the breathing, I'll just mentally say in, out, out. So in with the in breath, out with the out breath. If I'm distracted to a sound, hearing. If you like the sound, liking, then come back to the breath. Go to a thought, thinking, come back to the breath. If the thought's obsessive and it's going all the time, I'm planning something, planning, and then back to the breath. So you use this label. Now the way the labels work is this. Here I am, I'm sitting here holding up a clock, right? So you see Stephen holding a clock. Now in your head go clock, clock, clock. Notice how your attention goes to here. Now go, if you can see this far, go eyebrow, eyebrow, eyebrow. And notice how your attention goes to one of my eyebrows. See how it zooms in? So labelling is used to say, I'm not looking at this, I'm looking at that specific experience right here. And so what it does is if you get skilled at using labels, accurate labels, and making the labels more and more accurate, like digging deeper, like we talked about cleaning the house, digging deeper, what it does is it increases the accuracy in your meditation, it increases the accuracy of your concentration, and you'll find your practice will develop very, very quickly. Can you see how that works? So the use of labels is like a guard standing at a gate of a palace. Say there's an open day in the palace, so everybody comes in, a big market day. Mindfulness, what we're doing is we're standing at the gate, right? And people are coming in and out. Our job is not to stop them coming in and out. Now, if somebody's coming in and out and they're a villager that you see all the time, it's enough just to notice them coming in, isn't it? You know, hi Fred, and that's it. You just notice them. So if something comes up in your meditation practice quite often, and you know it really well, then you just notice it. So that's the noting, that's the mindfulness. Just know I'm experiencing this. But if a stranger comes in, something that's not clear, something you don't fully understand, you don't allow that stranger just to come in. That's not your job. What you do is you take more time and you question them, right? So that's when you start using a label. You can start putting a label on it. What's this? There's something happening there. Oh, I'm feeling aversive. Aversive, why? What does that feel like? Oh, look, there's tension here. Tension. And you start breaking it down. So this is like interrogating that stranger at the gate. So as long as you don't know it really closely, what you do is you keep using the labels. But if something is really normal to you, you really understand it, you can drop the label and just notice it. Otherwise the labels get in the way. So the labels are like a sign pointing, I'm looking at this. And you'll find it will really fine-tune your accuracy. Now just to wind this up, with using labels, there is an improper way of using labels. You've got to be careful. People use labelling in meditation as a weapon. They come up to me and say, Steve, I was doing what you say, I was labelling it. The thinking would come up, or the pain, I was labelling it, and it wouldn't go away. And I'm like, well, it's not supposed to go away. It's going to do whatever it's supposed to do. Don't use the labels as a weapon. That's driven by aversion. If you're going pain, 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 that's driven by anger. It's not going to go away. If you're doing it with thinking, trying to make it go away, thinking, 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 you can do that, but don't do it out of anger. Don't do it out of aversion. Don't do it to try to destroy something. Yeah? Be careful of that one. The other one is when you're using labeling, be careful that you're looking at the object and not at the label. In that classic Bruce Lee movie, Enter the Dragon, where he's teaching the student and he's pointing at the moon, and then he hits him on the head and says, no, don't look at the finger, look at the moon. Yeah, like that. The label is like the finger pointing at the moon. Be careful of that. Now, a skillful way to use it to build up concentration, you can use constant labeling. If you're come in, you go down to sit and you're thinking just going all the time. If you go thinking, 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 thinking without a gap, you will remove the thought. But don't do it out of anger. Do it with skill, knowing I'm doing this so I can concentrate. The thinking will stop. The reason is because thinking is unintentional thinking. Labeling is intentional thinking. Your mind cannot think two thoughts at once. So while you're causing it to think one thing, it can't think another. So you can actually use that. Once the mind starts to concentrate, settle down and still, then stop using that thinking, 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 intentional labeling. Drop that, go back to being mindful doing your practice, and then start using the labels to develop wisdom and understanding. The way you do that is then when it wanders off to thinking, you go thinking. And then watch the thinking, look at it. What's the elements behind it? Is this sticky? Is this driven? Is this hot? Is this moving? Is it strong? Is it weak? Start learning and understanding, using the label, point the attention, look at it, learn from it. Yeah, start using it in a skillful way like that. So you use it and you leave gaps because you want the mind to wander so you can see what's going on. Does that make sense? The difference? So noting is mindfulness. It's knowing the experience. Labeling is intentionally thinking a thought that describes it, that will point your attention towards it. Yeah? Want to give it a go in practice? I didn't just confuse everyone, did I?
I've got a question to leave to later, but you just touched on it then, which was the relationship or how the four elements tie in with labelling and noting. Is that drilling down more deeply?
The elements are deeper. When you get to the elements, the deeper you go, the more you break down the concept of a human being. Or more you break down, you get down below before the feeling of me is created. Yeah, so.
Yeah, but how do the four elements specifically relate to labelling and noting?
They're just another object to know and label. So the same way as a scientist might study engineering and work out how to get the legs of the chair right so that they will hold a human's weight, but they can also take that same chair, put it under a microscope and look at the atoms and everything working together.
Yeah.
So the elements is actually taking it down to the subatomic particle level. And you can actually get lower than the elements. The three characteristics I've mentioned before, anicca, dukkha, anatta. Yeah, that's impermanence, dukkha, which is the friction based on change, and not self, the inability, not finding any controller within anything, right? They're actually even lower than the elements. But this is just different levels. So what we're doing is we're going through layers as meditation practice develops. The deeper you go, the stronger impact it has on your mind and your relationship to everything. And everything starts to make sense. In the same way, through science, they're studying things, breaking down deeper and deeper. The deeper level they get, they're down to folding proteins now, right? The deeper level they get, the more it starts to make sense how it all fits together. And you can actually make changes at deep, like they're playing with DNA and stuff now. So you can make changes at these very lower levels that actually influences the upper level. You try to change it on the upper level, it doesn't work. You change it on the lower level, it completely changes the structure on the upper level. Mindfulness meditation is doing the same thing. The changes happen at the lower levels. At the lower levels. You try to do it on the surface level, you'll just be lost. You'll go around in circles, but you go to these lower levels and you can actually make changes. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So that's why we're kind of digging down deeper and deeper. Yeah. Okay, so let's give it a go.